All right. I just want to thank my two collaborators who have come here to chat with me about the exhibit Life Forms at Boundaries of Trans Ecology and kind of thinking about what it was like to interact with folks from pretty disparate fields or certainly across the divide of the humanities and the sciences. And so I have Carolina and Claire here, and I figured it would be good to have them both go ahead and introduce the kind of work that they do or the work that they're invested in. So Carolina, would you like to start?
Yeah, so my name is Carolina, and I'm a first year in Jay Stackowitz's lab. And I'm really interested in how organisms communicate with each other through chemistry. And so, looking at seagrasses, I'm interested in how seagrass communicates with its microbial community and how certain microbial partners can turn into opportunistic pathogens, which can lead to diseases in seagrass.
Claire, would you like to go ahead and introduce your sort of perspective and interactions with seagrass?
Yeah, so I'm Claire. I'm also first year in Jay Stackwitz's lab, and I'm mostly interested in seagrass as a habitat for different animals. So I work a lot with the little invertebrates that live in the seagrass. So seagrass needs a lot of light, and it gets fouled with algae, and there's all these cool little critters that climb around and eat all the algae and keep it clean so it can get enough light. And I'm really interested in the connectivity between different seagrass beds around bays, and thinking about how these things move around and what determines which things end up living where.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. What I feel like would be fun is to kind of recollect some of our little bit of bodega trips that we had together and kind of think about how I ended up writing a bunch of things for this project, and yet I certainly didn't anticipate what I was going to write beforehand or the experiences that we were going to have. But for the audience, I went out and did seagrass sampling with Claire, and I obviously have never ever done anything remotely related to ecology. And Carolina took me to multiple different kinds of zones, talked about upwelling with me. We saw a whale carcass. So we had these experiences. What was it kind of like interacting with someone who, is certainly not another ecologist? Did it feel really different, really exciting, or also really terrible because you had to tell me so much? What was that kind of like?
I'll go. I enjoyed it a lot. It was fun. You were a very good field helper. I was a little worried because I took you out to some, like, we were like really slogging through the mud, and like, I don't know, it was cold and we were driving everywhere at night and like didn't have a headlamp. Um, but you were a trooper in terms of like the field work, and it was fun. I really like uh just hearing how you thought about things was really interesting. And like we talked about this out in the field, but like the strict like recognition, I guess, in the social sciences of like your own perspectives and backgrounds and how that influences your research, I thought was really interesting. And I don't know, I feel like sometimes in the natural sciences it gets kind of washed away, but it's still just as important. So I enjoyed it a lot. It was fun to get to talk about seagrass too.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm still blown away by seagrass. New favorite like topic to bring up to people. Uh, Carolina, what about you?
I had a lot of fun with you as well. I am new to the West Coast and new to all the biomes that I showed you. So I guess we were exploring together, which we can recollect on with the whale carcass that we found in freshwater, which I was also surprised by that. You normally find those by the ocean, not by a freshwater river. But yeah, so it was kind of fun because I was kind of watching you be where I was when I started. So I was just passing on all the information that I learned from everyone out here. So it was kind of fun in that regard, just to like, and I guess you wrote about this in your work too, of how ecology is really like history and passing down knowledge and storytelling, because there are moments where I was just like, oh, these are the names of these species. I just know this because someone else told me. So I'm just going to tell this to Margaret. Like, let's just pass this information down. So, yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, I love hearing you describe it that way too, the sort of passing down of knowledge, and also thinking about, I think there's also like an assumption, at least within one's own disciplines, like a sort of hierarchy of knowledge, like your mentors are likely going to be often a little bit older than you or a little bit further on, or like a professor versus a grad student or what have you. And I kind of really enjoyed that, you know, you're both first years coming into your program, but I'm sort of at the end of my specific program, and yet you were the kind of the teachers and the guides and the experts. And I kind of appreciated the, I don't know, the ways in which that destabilizes the assumptions of who are the sort of knowledge receivers and the knowledge givers, and how we can kind of work horizontally as opposed to kind of hierarchically through information. That was really cool for me, at least, or a humbling experience, I suppose, to be kind of like, which the seagrass quite literally did, put me just kind of crawling in the water with Claire. And yeah, being in the pitch dark and be like, oh, this is kind of what I think it's like when you have like nothing as like sort of a foundation and you're sort of learning it on the fly for the first time, being stuck in the mud and just kind of having to let go and like kind of move with as opposed to against the scenery, the environment, the landscape. So that was really humbling for me, being so far in my program and thinking like, oh, I'm almost done. Like, who knows what's next? And here I am, like, you know, crawling on the ground or crawling in the ocean, basically.
I like that you described it as horizontal transfer though, because I definitely learned a lot from you too. Like it wasn't like, I don't know, I said a lot of like just little facts about seagrass and amphipods and stuff, but like I like you just did like I feel like we just think very differently, and it was really interesting to like we got and everything was like metaphorical and it all, I don't know, connecting it to different themes and stuff. It was really, I don't know, I really enjoyed it, and I think it was like a mutual transfer of knowledge too. I got a lot out
That
of
makes
it
me happy.
too.
Yeah, I agree. All the same things that Claire was saying. Yeah.
I was gonna also bring up, Claire, you were talking about just the sort of ways in which, and like I think it's academia generally, but maybe also the natural sciences more particularly, thinking about sort of who gets to have like a position of authority. I remember we briefly talked to someone who was clamming, and we were talking about how like this, you know, this is like this person's job, like they know this area better than even the scientists, you know, who might be associated with the university, because that's what they've been doing for decades, or it's been passed down within a family or within a community, that kind of hyper specific knowledge. And just thinking about the ways in which we assume those who maybe have specific degrees somehow suggest way more expertise than maybe someone whose job is within the fish industry or what have you, who's also like working in the field regularly as well. But somehow there can be this like dichotomy of who has more knowledge, or the assumption that more knowledge lies in one space than the other. And I thought that was that was something that felt really generative and inspiring to me too, to think about in regards to the sort of environment and who is interacting with it.
Yeah, I feel like there's like a lot of emphasis in some parts of science on like the theories and the math and everything and like big overall pictures, but I think there's a lot to be gained from like really place-based sort of studies too, which like there's a lot of scientists that do that as well. But yeah, like there's just like, I don't know, all these people who just understand especially like the natural history of an area so well. And I think that gets de-emphasized sometimes. Just like really understanding like how everything works at like a really mechanistic sort of natural history way. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of people I think who like all the fishermen and stuff, they go out every single day. Like you see the same thing every day. You can like watch it change and stuff. And I feel like you notice a lot more too. Just being like really immersed in a system.
Yeah, absolutely. So Carolina, what really ran through your mind when you saw the whale carcass? Because I was so excited that you were so shocked, because I was very like perplexed, but then I was worried that yeah, that was just like a me thing. Like maybe this just happens all the time somehow. Like I don't know. And so like I'm constantly, I felt like I was like, wow, Carolina, that's so neat. Claire, that's so amazing. Oh my gosh. So the fact that you seemed really taken aback was really exciting to share with you, just like because you were sort of the expert for me, and being able to see like, oh my God.
Yeah,
What was that like?
the real expert. It was like, oh, that was a really big jump that whale did. Yeah, that was my first thought, was like, wow, that whale jumped real far over that sand dune.
Oh,
It was like where Salmon Creek is, but like where the bridge to Salmon Creek is. So it was like past the dunes, like all the way back there. And so it was just a great moment because, you know, we went over this one dune, and Margaret and I went to the banks of Salmon Creek, and normally freshwater systems they do smell sulfury. So I'm like, let's give Margaret the full immersion. So we're like squatting down by the water, and I'm like, do you smell that rich sulfur smell? Then I'm smelling it, and I'm like, it doesn't smell sulfury, it smells like death. Like, it smells way worse. And I'm like, well, maybe I've gone nose blind or something, like maybe something is off. And I'm like, these are areas of high decomposition. And then I turn to my left, and we are right next to a whale vault, like a dead whale. And Margaret's like, how did it get here? And I'm like, there was a really big jump, and it like jumped all the way from the ocean here. Because I don't know, like, because I can control the narrative. No, I'm just kidding. So then we both learned something that day, because we climbed over that dune and realized that this freshwater creek estuary meets the ocean. So there must have been just a big rainstorm, and it flooded into the ocean, and then it drew up this whale carcass like all the way up the creek. So it was really crazy. But now Margaret has experienced both the sulfur smell and the death smell.
Yeah, I'm an expert. I've got them both down.
That's the whole ocean.
Yeah, exactly. I understand oceans and estuaries perfectly now, you know, just I could take any test and pass with flying colors.
Yes. And then we saw like the birds of the ocean, like those ducks that were swimming in the surf, and just Bodega is a crazy place, all the wind, and it was great. Yeah.
Do you either ever feel like, because this is sort of your field or like where you're building your skill set, where you're sort of creating your career, that do you ever feel like you lose that enamor of like, oh my gosh, like there's just like birds just kind of like bobbing like buoys in the water, like how and why? Like, do you ever feel like you lose that because you're so, you know, ingrained and having to focus and thinking about probably much more involved questions than like, why are the birds just like little buoys in the water? But I'm curious about that, because I felt like just kind of like overload of wonder the whole time. I was like exhausted every day after we'd been out and about, because I was just like, I can't even process everything. I'm thinking about it so differently. So I don't know if that is different, since this is your day-to-day life in a lot of ways.
You can go first, Claire, if you want, since I spoke last, but it doesn't matter for me.
I'll go. I mean, I really enjoy it a lot. I feel like, as Carolina said, like moving to the Pacific was helpful in like igniting more of that like wonder too, because everything's so different. It's so pretty, and like, I don't know, there's rocks everywhere. Atlantic's so sandy. But I feel like, I don't know, I like when we do surveys and stuff every day over the summer, and we like are just doing the same thing every morning, and it's like 5 a.m, and you're like sitting there and like counting seagrass blades. Like, I feel like when I'm like working, and like then it's harder to, I get distracted, but it's like there's a task, you know. But I still do, like, if we have a free moment or whatever, I like to just kind of like look at stuff swimming around, and that's kind of like why I wanted to do what I'm doing, was because I just think it's also cool. And yeah, like that feeling of wonder, I guess.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I loved the waiting periods we had for the tide sometimes, and we could kind of just look around at the seagrass and just kind of see what other little organisms and things were going on while we waited, like that there was this sort of not always perfectly determined interval of time to just kind of be curious and be like, well, we have to kill time, so now we can just kind of have some fun as we're waiting for the right time to do the sampling. And I thought that was really fun too, and very playful in some ways.
Yeah, and like for me, when it's the moments where I'm like stuck inside and I'm reading a lot about chemistry or microbiology or physiology that I kind of start to like get lost in the weeds. But then it's when I do field work that then that sense of wonder is reestablished. And it's like, oh yeah, I have no ceiling over my head. Like this is a good feeling. It feels really freeing. And the moments that Claire was talking about of like after the wasting disease surveys, when you're at like after we do our field work and we're like waiting for the tide to come back or something, you can like see what brings wonder to everyone, because like Claire goes out and is just like wading the grass and is like looking for bugs like this. And then you have some people who are just like looking at the sky and the mountains. And then like for me, it's like looking at the blades of seagrass and then like seeing the diseased lesions gives me like an overwhelming sense of purpose. Like, okay, like this is like a call to action is what I feel when I see the leaves, where it's like, okay, like this is why I'm learning these skills back in Davis, like because I want to help these species. So it's just like it all comes together, like, and it makes the lab work worth it, and it gives you inspiration for experiments that you want to conduct. So yeah.
I liked how you were talking about that, like certain things different people will gravitate or observe different things when they're sort of in their moments of wonder. I really liked thinking about how that can sort of be a reflection of one's personality too, or certain characteristics of a person. I was going to say, how prior to interacting with me, I guess, on this project, or I guess like me as a person, has anything about the ways in which I think about being trans, since a lot of this project is also about how can the environment actually facilitate a more useful framework for thinking about trans identities for people, but also just sort of the inherent sort of mutability of many kinds of organisms, many kinds of quote unquote natural spaces. Would you have ever been like, yes, I would put coastal wetlands or these kinds of spaces in conversation with transgender people? Like that would just make the most sense to me? Or how has that either changed or not changed kind of your own perspectives on these things, since that's a huge aspect of the work that I'm trying to do?
So when we first met, like when we first started emailing, I spoke to you about my background in taking courses on environmental injustice, focusing on like the Atchafalaya River and the Mississippi River. And so in those courses that I took, we always talked about how like throughout history, marginalized communities were put in like floodlands because they're not valued, or they're like the lands aren't valued, even though naturally they're highly valuable lands.
Okay.
And so when I first was speaking with you, I had this idea that maybe your work was going to tie into this larger, like these maybe historical concepts of marginalized communities with wetlands. But then after reading your work, what you exposed me to and what I really appreciated was like these individual connections to individual organisms or specific aspects of a landscape. And so that was a completely new perspective of how an individual's experience of being trans and what trans means and how you are marginalized as an individual, not looking at communities as a whole. Like that was very moving to me, and that exposed me to a whole different part of your experience that I never thought about. So thank you for writing that.
Oh, no, thank you for what a lovely articulation. I mean, I definitely felt like you and I connected a lot thinking about the sort of larger social and environmental histories of land development or drainage and floodplain spaces, and how often those lands are seen as not profitable. And so putting communities, typically non-white communities, in those spaces, that you can just kind of see that throughout history pretty globally, at least like in like Western European history. And I think, you know, my dissertation looks at that a lot more in terms of those sort of larger swaths of sort of historical junctures in which you can really see that happening, especially in settler places in which indigenous communities are overtaken and sort of removed from their lands. The land can be drained and privatized, et cetera, all that kind of horrible shit that we kind of already know. But yeah, I couldn't help, like, there was something about thinking about the work that you all do by being in the field, and like the methodologies of observation and sort of observation, data collecting really changed a lot of how I even think about my own methodology, since unsurprisingly, I'm mostly in archives and textual sort of objects, not really getting to go out and be sort of in a space that's related to the body as much. Like, I feel like so much of the ecological work you both do is very embodied. So there was like a way in which being in these spaces really brought me into my body. And I was surprised by that. Like, I didn't think it would inherently connect me more to my body in the ways that it did, or at least in the ways in which I want to make a case for, I guess, politically thinking about right now, the various different legislations for trans people and trans youths around medical care, that a lot of that comes down to pathologizing medical interventions, suggesting that there's something problematic about wanting to change one's body, that that's actually quite unnatural, and trying to think about the ways in which mutability of bodies, even human bodies, is actually something that we can sort of tie to the spaces that you all showed me, this sort of constancy of change, even in the course of a day of a tidal flat, you know, how that actually might be a useful way to think about gender, as opposed to constantly thinking about gendered bodies as either biologically fixed and static or somehow just socially performative. So that was something that I was surprised by, that you both actually brought me more into. But Claire, do you have anything you would like to add? I feel like, as I want to do, especially when I'm teaching, is I'll just prattle on.
No, but everything you say is so nicely worded. It's so nice to listen to you prattle on. I really enjoy it. I agree with Carolina. Your work was it was very moving, and very, like, the personal touch of it too. I guess before, I was trying to think, like, before meeting you, I'd taken classes both in like gender studies and in like environmental studies and ecology and stuff, and never really connected the two. And then we were out there talking and stuff, and it was like so much overlap, and everything is like trying to fit things into categories that maybe don't have strict bounds, or probably, like, definitely don't a lot of the time, you know, and like, I don't know, everything so dynamic. And I agree, like, I think, I don't know, I thought your work was very powerful, and connecting it to the natural system, I think, is really cool, because it's also like in biology, like in ecology and stuff, like, I don't know, sex isn't even really like a set thing in a lot of species. And I don't know, what you might call gender roles or whatever in different species aren't super set, and it all changes, and it's all dependent on context and things like species lives and stuff. And I don't know, I thought it was really cool, all of your connections between your own personal experience and like the stuff in the field.
Oh, I definitely appreciate that. I was going to say, it was such a, like, I think I was really nervous at first, not because of anything particular about either of you individually. For the record, it was more like, oh my gosh, like, I don't normally interact with ecologists, so that's very scary and stressful. Also, I don't know what the reception will be to someone who is not only not an ecologist, but also like I'm really like, I'm super trans, just trans out the wazoo. Let's talk about the environment in this like sort of perspective and lens. And I'm gonna bring that and really front load it and just being like, I wonder like what that will be like for other people. Like it's, I often am only engaging so intensely in that sort of identity, I guess like when I'm teaching in the gender studies department or something, and sort of it feels not strange or unfamiliar to have that be like a thing that I'm aware of and also conversing about, but sort of bringing it to a space that I guess maybe I think I made an assumption that would like have it be so devoided, like, oh, ecology, this is like trans identity or one's own identity in relation to what they're seeing and interacting with is like, it's going to be completely divorced, or no one's going to be receptive to it, even though like there was never not a time in which you were both like, you guys were always incredibly receptive and so helpful and took all of my questions and how I wanted to try to think about things and kind of met me way more than halfway. But I think that was like a reservation and an unfortunate judgment that I was like very weary of coming into the collaboration, was like, oh no, like I can be like, no, you can't talk about it that way. Like what? What is that? No, get that trans perspective out of here. There's no room for it. Like, we're just gonna like do science, whatever that means. Like I think I had a really shitty caricature that was like not even close to what the experience ended up being like whatsoever. Like I was really taken aback. But I don't know if you all had like reservations or just sort of like, I wonder what it'll be like doing this. Cause I mean, I would totally be fine if you're like, is this like just like a book person? I don't, what are they gonna do? Tell like quote literature to me while we're waiting for the tide to come in? Just kidding.
I mean, I was really excited, honestly. I feel like ecology is like, it's like the study of like organisms and nature and stuff, but it's like the study of all of that through like humans, right? Like so much of it is like how do we, what it like we decide what's a species, we decide what's the edge of a site or whatever, and like what's important is whatever we measure. So it's not like I feel like physics, maybe you could say there's all these particles and there's only so many particles and they're doing, whatever they do is what they do. But there's just like so many complexities of ecology that we decide what we think, like it's all filtered through the lens of the people doing the work. So I don't know. I feel like ecology generally is like and it's so connected to humans too, right? Like it's all like people use the land and everything, and nothing is like really untouched at this point, and everything's important to people. So I don't know. I was excited to have a more of a human perspective. I was into it. And I appreciated how vulnerable you were too. I don't know. And really open. It made the experience like super meaningful for me as well. But yeah, I was excited and I really enjoyed it.
God, me too. It like I still talk about it with literally every person I get to interact with in my department. Like, hey, have I told you about Bodega Bay? Like, let me tell you about what it was like working with these ecologists. Like, it was the best thing ever. I felt like I got to have ecology boot camp, and now I can be extremely cocky for an English instructor slash grad student. So you both taught me more than I could have ever anticipated. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I wanted to piggyback off of Claire, and I had no reservations working with you. I really like what you do. My best friend's an English major, and I just got really excited, and I was looking forward to working with you. And that there's kind of, I guess, in my personal experience, I've been seeing this shift in ecology where it has become a little more humanized or more personal, and like it's not just science, it's like who you're carrying with you to the field, or like how you're expanding opportunity, or how this science affects society, or what system you're working with, why is it important, both naturally but also how it affects humans. So it just felt like a natural step forward to bring this project to life and like take the steps forward to put it together. because I think this is the direction that ecology is going. It's like it is merging the two fields, and it's just this is the direction it's going. I don't think I had to say anything else. Sorry,
Cool.
that's just it. It's just so I just felt natural. Like this was just a natural direction. So
I love that. That like it was so exciting to like feel that kind of responsiveness from both of you and like recognizing like my own sort of fear and reservations being very assumptive that had actually no basis. It was just sort of, well, ecology is science, and like science traditionally is not super kind to like trans embodied people. Like it's not really the place one goes to find sort of refuge or like healing necessarily. Or if you do, you have to kind of go through these hoops to make it work for you in terms of like if you want to receive gender affirming surgery or what have you. And so I think like I really took like a very large jump, like ecology to science. Science is scary for like, I'm going to be afraid, but I'm going to try to do this anyways, or I'm just going to try to get certain levels of knowledge that will help me think more about this, as opposed to like just feeling so much more like it felt so much more collaborative for me than I think I assumed it could or would be, or like that I, you know, feel like I've developed beyond into like friendships with both of you as well outside of just doing this work. But there was so much about what you both did in terms of being field guides with me that definitely changed my perspective on what is sort of acceptable and supportive within like a conversation of, in terms of ecology. Like I think I had really very outdated, if not completely sort of misconstrued assumptions of like the conversations you would have with an ecologist. But like I just talked to you as if I would talk to anyone else about whatever I was thinking about, and you both were, you know, obviously very brilliant, but also like totally willing to think around that or be like, oh yeah, you know, classifications are these really kind of confusing, fuzzy things. Like, and like being like, oh, so I'm not pointing out a thing that the people in ecology don't wonder about too. Like I we're like able to have that conversation. And that felt really exciting. I assumed I would be sort of in a much different place. And I think that was, you know, perhaps like a really I don't know, vital thing for me to, I guess, bring back to the environmental humanities space, the conversation of like thinking about the environment, but through like a humanities perspective, the assumption that that perspective is just so disparate and different or like cut off from an ecology perspective, when actually they seem very well married when brought together. And there is that sort of horizontal kind of conversational possibility that was so much more exciting. I'm like, oh, why aren't we always collaborating? Like, I just want to continue to collaborate and talk to people outside of my field, because it seems so much more generative and more exciting. But yeah, I mean, that was like probably like a long sort of gracious thank you more than anything for taking not only my vulnerability, but also my judgmental assumptions as a person coming from the humanities about what it would be like to interact in a more sort of quote unquote scientific capacity. And I was like, oh, well, I was wrong. Got to put that aside. Glad I didn't ever say that out loud and just kind of did some interior work on myself about how I had that judgment. That's cool. Grew as a person through this process, which really is what it felt like. Wow, I grew a lot as a person by working with ecologists. Like individual self-growth was very exciting. But yeah, I was gonna say, I really also was very surprised, again, thinking like, you know, part of why you both chose ecology as your fields is there's something about being able to sort of be out and sort of like getting to be so in your body when you're doing certain kinds of work that was something that really drew you to ecology. Like I would love to hear that, because I didn't think about it that much, and then I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. Like, you know, it seems like a huge, really significant part of it. But yeah, like, you know, if you want to either be like, hell yeah, or just kind of address what that's like for you, or if that's just an obvious perk of doing ecological work.
Yeah, Claire and I are just like, mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. I feel like if you asked any field ecologist, they would be the first thing they'll say is, I really love working with my hands. Okay. That's every like I growing up, I was always very energetic and I would just they would just kick me outside, you know? And when I started undergrad, I was originally an engineering major, like material science and engineering. And I was just kept dicing between all these different majors. And then once my dad was just like, what did you do when you were 6? And then pursue that major. And so I thought about what I did when I was a kid, and I was always outside running around pretending the cat was like a jaguar or something, like doing collecting bugs or whatever. Shout out Claire. No. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna switch my major to biology. And now I'm in grad school. And so when I was applying to grad schools, it was ecology and population biology programs. And just like there's no greater feeling. I mean, like waking up at 4:30 in the morning is hard. It is hard. Okay. It is hard waking up at 4:30 in the morning and then driving 40 minutes. The sun is not up yet. It is windy. It is cold. The water is freezing. You are going against the wind. You fall in the mud. The water goes in your waders. There is mud everywhere. You are pulling grates from 3 meters in the mud. But afterwards, when you're like worn out, it feels so good. Like it feels so like it is such a good feeling. So it was like that physical rewarding feeling, but then also it's like not only am I doing that, I'm getting paid to do it, but I'm also like pushing the science bubble.
Yeah.
And I'm learning, like every day I'm learning, and I'm learning about something that I really love and that I care about. So it's kind of like boop, boop, boop. I like it. I'm good at it and I find purpose in it.
Yeah.
So why not? So yeah.
That was such a great visceral description of just like being up at like such a unusual hour, obviously, because you know you kind of have to go with what's going to be available to you environmentally, so you kind of have to work with that. But then just your description of pulling out grates and just mud, cold water, everything going everywhere all over you, yeah, that's it feels like a very accurate description of that embodiment. It's like total body, the work that you both do.
Just you and your lab mate, like just one quick lab story aside, is just me and Claire. Picture it: morning, wind, cold, waders, and all of our bags to collect 500 pounds of mud just started flying. And Claire and I were running after these bags in the mud. And then I just like face planted just in the mud, and Claire just runs past me. It was like in slow motion. It was so funny. But they make for great stories around a campfire, around in a cabin, you know, in the future. So yeah.
Yeah, I Carolina articulated everything I was thinking. I just like you were saying before, was like playing, like this is like what I did as a child, and I kind of just kept doing it, and I really, it just like it brings me a lot of joy. I don't know, like being outside. And yeah, it's like here so the right before I right after I graduated college, before I went to grad school, I like worked in a lab on the East Coast doing seagrass stuff, and we were out, like it was just like we would do subtidal things, so you didn't have to worry that much about the tide, so we'd be out like all day. And it was also like it was so much in my body, but also I really just enjoyed like the connection I felt between my body and like the rest of the world. Like it was like we would have to worry about thunderstorms, which don't happen here, but like you were just like as soon as the pressure started changing, everyone was like, oh no, like everyone's ears kind of perked up, you know, you look for the clouds, figure out where you're gonna go so you don't like die in your metal boat. Or like you like there'd be a bunch of birds or something in one spot, and it was like you go out every single day and just spend all this time in the same system, like the fishermen and stuff that we were talking about before. Like you just get like kind of a second sense of like, oh, there must be like big fish over there, maybe like there's cool water coming in or something, like, and the fish are there and there's a bunch of birds eating the fish. Like you just sort of like connect more with being outside. And I like field work every time I do it. Like when we do all the wasting disease surveys over the summer, like we go out every day for a whole low tide cycle, and you're super sleep deprived because you wake up really early every morning, and it always seems to get earlier. And like, and I don't know, you're at like, we go to the same site multiple times sometimes, and it's just like seeing the same place and like the little changes that happen day to day. And you just learn the kind of quirks of like a place, you know, like, oh, you know, there's a drop off here, and like there's not as much grass over here as over here, and there's things that live here but not there. And I don't know, I really enjoy that too, like feeling very like just in my own body, but also in this greater, larger sort of plugged in world.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you both like maybe I need to think more like an ecologist, even when I'm not doing directly ecological work. Cause like when Claire first showed up and was like, okay, so we're gonna like have to like drive maybe at this time and like hopefully we'll get there in enough time before the tide is like, you know, too far in because we have to get to this next site, which is about 45 minutes away. And like it really truly didn't ever occur to me. I was like, oh, it's just like, you know, when I get up and I like schedule my day, like I'm gonna do work from this hour to this hour, and then I just stop and I can just choose which hours I want to do work. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. The environment waits for no one. Like I can't just excuse me. I would be much more preferential if this happened between noon and 2, because I would really like to be done by 2:30 p.m. and then just have the day off, as opposed to cut to like I think our last day, Claire, where you're like, are you sure you want to go? Like it's gonna be really stormy and we have to go quite far. And it's like about a mile walk in the waders, which are already like too big for me anyways. And you know, and I was like, yeah, I want to go. And I just like remember us being out there and it was like it was raining so bad. And I couldn't, I was like, I honestly, if it wasn't for Claire, I was like, I probably would have ended up dying. I would just kept walking outward as opposed to like, I was like, I couldn't tell where like land was anymore. Everything was completely black because the sun had already gone down. And I was like, this is both exhilarating and slightly terrifying. And it's just like, I'm in a sort of rain jacket, but I'm soaked everywhere. I'm like, oh, you know, this is where I die, but it would be okay because this was so exciting. And I just like, it never occurred to me that that would be our reality. It was like kind of having interesting hours because obviously, you know, I may be able to control, you know, these 100 or so year old books that I usually am looking at, which aren't going anywhere because they're all indexed online. So they can be accessed anytime, unlike the environment. And then also dealing with the various like sort of incremental conditions of the environment, which like felt really badass. Like I definitely felt like I was in an adventure thriller movie for like a hot second on that day. And I may have like embellished how like dangerous it was to people back in the English department for some extra street cred.
No, it was super dangerous.
I feel like everyone who does field work too, you do it kind of so you can get like the like I'm so cool, you know, like like we're on the mud, like
Yeah, like I have 4 staples in my leg from like getting cut in the field. And yeah, you know, that's like the best party story to talk about that field work experience.
like type 2 fun.
Yeah, how could
Yeah.
you not?
Type 2 fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, well, I was actually gonna ask you like your experiences. So like I wonder that like ecologists or like Claire and I were talking about when we're in the field and we're doing our work and then we find that purpose and we're doing this for some greater cause, earth, that thing. And I was thinking about like your experiences of like going to the library, and you do a lot of archive work, and so you interpret a lot of people's words. And so I bet there's like a lot of times where you read this passage like over and over again, and then one day it kind of like clicks where you can understand what that person was saying in the past, but like it might not have been like no one might have understood what they were saying, but like you get it now. Like that time, it just wasn't written for that time, but like you get it now. And so it's like that feeling is like what I feel like in the seagrass bed when there's like a green crab that's like slowly walking along, and then it's just like, oh, that's another whole life and being doing its own thing, and that's like a secret that I just witnessed. So I'm wondering, like, were there moments where you had those revelations where, because you were in the system that you were reading about, so you could finally connect those dots with what you read and what you saw and what you experienced, which what people wrote about. It was just like this like
Yeah.
circle.
No, absolutely. I mean, I definitely like feel so much more, I guess, adamant in terms of like anyone who wants to do like environmental humanities or environmental history kind of work. Like, okay, so you are looking at documents or texts from 100+ years ago that are essentially describing some kind of system that you can see today. Obviously, it'll be different because time has happened. But if you've never actually been sort of like in the system, like embodying being in that space, in that environment or that habitat, like it truly, like I was able to blow through writing or finishing my first draft, or my, excuse me, not my first draft, my first chapter completely that was about coastal wetlands, because I think I was like in the field with you both regularly. Like I finished like 25 pages, like new pages in a couple of weeks to finish off that chapter and kind of move on to the next one, and realize that being in the actual system is like essential, I think, to be able to do the kind of work. Like I think, not that I always want to super be critical of the sort of fields that I work in or thinking about historical fields, but oftentimes I don't think many folks who do write about literary and sort of historical arguments are like, oh, I should probably go figure out what a wetland really is like. Like I should go see one in person, or like, what is a freshwater wetland versus, a saltwater, or like, how is a tidal flat kind of different than a bog, or whatever it might be, since that was kind of like, I don't know how to understand these things because I've never seen them really, like other than as words on a page. But I think that truly made it so much easier to articulate and work through how much evidence for the sort of dynamic and mutable like possibilities of all, like all environments, not just wetlands specifically. I think I like wetland for the fact that within the word itself it quite literalizes this sort of like inability to categorize. Like the word itself kind of showcases that more easily than like water, which like water obviously is changing all the time. Like that's pretty obvious, even if it's just called water. But I think it like really made it easier for me to be able to explain, justify, and feel confident in understanding the work that I was doing. Or even if it is like, okay, this 19th century understanding isn't super accurate, but like being able to take the actual ecological accuracy and thinking about what they might have wanted to try to interpret aesthetically, for instance, like in a novel, like why would they, describe or sort of utilize a wetland space the way that it's getting used, or like why are these particular kinds of figures or characters occupying that space. Oh, it actually can help us get back to something like what Carolina was talking about, like, oh, we can see this in the like we can actually see it in artistic literature, this way in which marginalized or vulnerable communities often are depicted or represented as being in these sort of death spaces or spaces of hardship, or the assumption that particular kinds of like lands that are in transition are seen as spaces one wouldn't willingly want to choose to live in. Like that's actually a challenge to live there, but like why would someone live there nonetheless? What kind of conceptions of survival or need for survival would afford certain bodies to be in these harsher zones or spaces? And so I think that it really did make that kind of work more valuable, I think, for me. In terms of like just sort of general archival work, my sort of larger, I guess, scholarly endeavor is constantly trying to find new archives for trans histories, since transness isn't something that you can kind of look back on and just be like, oh, and here we see like the first trans person. I mean, you can like in the 20th century and maybe very late 19th century, but there's really nothing beyond that, because there isn't that kind of language, wasn't at least being used in sort of the English speaking world that would perfectly equate to transgender or trans or what have you. And so how can I sort of locate or find other sort of historical instances of, nonconformity or gender unconformities, or sort of ways in which gender seems to be doing things that, are different than what we kind of understand to be stable depictions, even still today, of like cis womanhood or cis manhood. And looking at the ways in which authors have used natural discourses, especially wetland discourses, to kind of think about the kinds of bodies that will occupy those spaces, characters who may socially be a woman, but actually when they're in that space, they're always described as wild, untamed, or feral. What that might mean for a character who's maybe otherwise a tomboy being associated with an environment like that. Is that like a way for us to kind of envision a language of transness before we had that kind of language, and be helpful to show that there is evidence of this phenomenon, and it's not just like something that just happened in the 20th century out of nowhere, that like trans people came out of nowhere, when that's not true. There has always been people who've resisted, I think, very cleanly delineated gender categories, just trying to find how do you locate that and justify that that is a worthwhile place to point to a genealogy of that kind of subjecthood or identity. So I was trying to think, I was like, yeah, like what is, like, how do I value that kind of work? Because sometimes it is really painstaking to be hunched over a book and reread a passage as it's like, you're absolutely right, Carolyn. It's like, sometimes I might read the same passage over a couple of years and be like, it's just, I know there's something there that's important, but I can't quite articulate why it seems so valuable. And I think that endeavor is constantly seeing what discourses can help illuminate ways for us to actually have an extended sort of history of transness, both in terms of sort of human embodiments of it, but also in other kinds of embodiments. That was super helpful. Now I'm going to be thinking about this idea of purpose, Carolina. Thank you. Like, oh yeah, I should really think about it. Like, I think that is my purpose, but I don't usually phrase it in that kind of vocabulary. Yeah, I know we're hitting the hour mark, so I want to go ahead and just turn to both of you and see if you have any sort of last things you want to say about, the work that you do, the work that we did, before I go ahead and close this out, because you've given me way beyond more than enough of your time, which has been, I'm grateful for, and I want to make sure I don't keep you both too much longer.
I just wanted to say thank you for letting us collaborate with you, and thank you for the work that you're doing, because also when I was reading this work, you might not recognize this, but you are showing other youths and people who are in your position, but maybe years like in an earlier stage of where you are now, who might not have been able to envision themselves in ecology, or might not have been able to envision themselves in environmental social sciences, but you doing the thing and getting a fellowship and working with an art museum and making this project and making this body of work just is very inspiring and shows youth that they can do it too. So I just wanted to like verbalize that so that you can recognize this. So thank you.
Yeah, I would just second all of that. I really appreciated you being so open and vulnerable and letting us all kind of into your life, like not even just the two of us, but like in your work as well. I don't know, it's really like very beautifully written. I don't know, I feel like interdisciplinary research is sort of like the way of the future, right? Like it's the only way we're going to get through things. And I thought this being a collaboration was really cool too, just because we all have our own perspectives, and like we think like fundamentally differently. Like I could go read a lot of work on like gender in wetlands and stuff, but like I don't know, it's not like, we have our own perspective, we have our own experiences, and I think actually having different people come together and share it is like the most fruitful way to sort of get new insights. But yeah, thank you. I don't know, it was really fun.
Yeah, thank you both so much. And I agree. I think interdisciplinary work is where we should be looking to. And I also cannot thank you both enough for being willing to collaborate, and at least in my opinion, doing substantial amounts of collaborative work on this. Like certainly it has felt like whatever I did only happened because of the two of you. So like I can only say that like it would have never been possible otherwise. I would have never. I feel like you've both changed my like ways of thinking too, and the frameworks with which I think with, which I am forever grateful for. So thank you so much. And I look forward to further discussions, collaborations, and interactions as friends too beyond this. I'm gonna go ahead and quit recording.